Near the start of the book, in chapter 1, you establish fundamental distinctions between different types of language models, and you introduce the critical difference between workflows and agents proper. So, yeah, you explain that like autoregressive models are the writers, so things like GPT, Claude, Llama, while encoding models like BERT are readers, so these are the language models. But the key thing in building agentic AI isn't so much what kind of model people are choosing. It's defining the difference between workflows and agents. And yeah, so tell us about workflows versus agents and what it means to have agency, what that distinction is.
No, happily. I think it's actually a very almost a quick anecdote about that is the book. The title of the book, Building Agentic AI, was actually not the original title. The original title of the book that I wanted, that I first came up with, was along the lines of building applied AI. And I think that kind of evolved into agentic, mostly because of that exact question, John. The question of, well, not everything I'm going to write about is a pure agent. And I always want to make sure I'm being honest and saying, some of this is agents, some of this isn't agents. So I wanted to make that distinction up front as quickly as possible. The idea that not everything that is going to be built is a pure agent. So to your question, an agent, quite simply, is an LLM, a large language model, with access to tools. And I mean tools in the function calling sense, meaning this thing can Google something if it wants to. This thing can read a file from my desktop if it wants to while it's talking to me. That's almost a pure agent, if you will. A workflow is very much a deterministic data and code path. So most people's AI deployments on their production loads are workflows, meaning a question comes in, and without asking an LLM, I use an LLM embedding to retrieve some documents. I construct a prompt that a human has already engineered. I run it through the LLM. I grab what the LLM says, and I show it to the human. None of that was agentic. The LLM never decided to use a tool. It was all forced upon it. So when you take away the agency, I think that's kind of the key. When you take away the agency of the LLM to choose the next path, you are in workflow territory. Now, there's also the hybrid case, which I'm sure we'll get into, but the distinction there is deterministic code paths versus agency among the LLMs.
Right. So in the agency case, it implies that there's some amount of maybe a loop or the ability to call up other agents. Things are going to happen that you, as the programmer that developed this system, are not going to be able to predetermine.
Correct. And I think on some levels, you can predetermine some things. For example, if I only give an LLM a tool to Google something, then, okay, I have a pretty certain what it's going to do when I ask it to look something up. But a lot of modern deployments really start at 5 to 10 tools. And then there's the orchestration of tools, meaning which tool goes first? What if I use the tool wrong? What if I Google something inefficiently? And then I have to follow it up with a second Google search. So you enter this kind of quagmire of, it's not just which tools is it using, but in what order and how efficiently. And it's almost like you are inviting this nebulous workflow that the agent gets to decide how to navigate. And you as the human kind of sit back and say, man, I hope this thing does it efficiently and correctly.